Biggie Smalls was shot dead on March 9th, 1997, and the LAPD officers assigned to find his killer were already working for the man his family accused of ordering the hit. Biggie's family spent 8 years and millions of dollars trying to prove it in federal court. A judge declared a mistrial after discovering the LAPD had hidden an entire collection of documents from the court. The city was ordered to pay over $1 million in sanctions. And the name at the center of every document, the name the LAPD kept circling back to, was the same name connected to the murder of Tupac Shakur 5 months earlier. Today, you're going to see exactly what those files revealed, what the detectives who ran the investigation said on camera in 2023, and the one fact that connects both murders that nobody has ever been able to explain away. The murder the LAPD could not solve. Biggie Smalls was at the top of the world in March 1997. Life After Death was 11 days away from dropping. The album was already being called a masterpiece. He had flown to Los Angeles for the Soul Train Music Awards. He was supposed to be back in New York before the week was out. On the night of March 9th, 1997, Biggie left the Peterson Automotive Museum after the Vibe magazine afterparty. He got into a GMC Suburban. His convoy pulled out onto Wilshire Boulevard. A dark-colored Chevrolet Impala pulled up alongside the Suburban at a red light. The driver fired 4 shots through the passenger window. 1 bullet hit Biggie in the thigh. 1 hit him in the back. 1 hit him in the forearm. The 4th shot entered his right hip and passed through several vital organs. He was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. He was pronounced dead at 1:15 in the morning. He was 24 years old. The LAPD opened a homicide investigation immediately. Detectives were assigned, resources were committed. The case was treated as a priority. And then, almost nothing happened. No arrests, no charges, no suspects named publicly. Months turned into years. Years turned into a decade. And every time Biggie's family asked what was happening, the LAPD gave them the same answer. The investigation is ongoing. But here's what the LAPD did not say publicly. The lead detective assigned to Biggie's murder case, a man named Russell Poole, had developed a theory that pointed directly at the LAPD itself. Poole believed that a Rampart Division officer named David Mack had connections to Death Row Records. He believed that Mack's associate, a man named Amir Muhammad, was the shooter, and he believed that LAPD officers had been working off-duty security for Death Row Records on the night Biggie was killed. Russell Poole took his findings to his supervisors. His supervisors shut the investigation down. Poole resigned from the LAPD in 1999. He spent the next 20 years trying to get someone to listen. Meanwhile, the LAPD kept telling the world the case was open and ongoing. But here is what makes this even more significant. The detective who eventually took over the investigation, a man named Greg Kading, sat down on camera in 2023. And what he said about who he believed killed Biggie and how confident he was about it is not what the LAPD ever said publicly. The detective who actually ran the LAPD investigation into Biggie's murder sat down on camera in 2023. And for the first time, he named the 3 people he believes were responsible.
I think Poochie was involved. I think Suge Knight orchestrated it through his, at the time, girlfriend / baby mama. I think she was the intermediary between Suge and at least one of the co-conspirators. I do believe Poochie was directly involved. There may have been an additional person who was maybe acting as a lookout, because that makes the most sense considering the circumstances of the shooting. He may not have acted alone, but those are the 3 people that I'm very confident were involved.
3 people: Suge Knight, his baby mama, a man named Poochie, named by the detective who ran the investigation, on camera in 2023, 26 years after the murder. And not one of those 3 people has ever been charged with anything connected to Biggie's death. The case is still open. The murder is still officially unsolved. And the family that spent 8 years fighting to get answers in federal court is still waiting. But here's the question nobody asked at the time. If Greg Kading believes Suge Knight orchestrated Biggie's murder, and Suge Knight was already connected to Tupac's murder 5 months earlier, why did both investigations stall at exactly the same point? What you just heard is what the detective believes, but what Biggie's own family found when they took the LAPD to federal court, and what a judge discovered hidden inside the department's own files, is something the detective was never supposed to talk about. That is coming in the next chapter. The lawsuit that exposed everything. In 2002, 5 years after Biggie was murdered, his mother, Valletta Wallace, had enough. She hired attorneys. She filed a wrongful death lawsuit in federal court. The case was called Wallace versus City of Los Angeles, and the central claim was not complicated. Valletta Wallace believed the LAPD knew who killed her son and had been protecting them. The lawsuit named several defendants. It named the City of Los Angeles. It named individual LAPD officers. And it named Suge Knight, the founder of Death Row Records, as the person who ordered the killing. The city fought back immediately. The LAPD denied everything. Their attorneys argued there was no evidence of misconduct. They told the court the department had conducted a thorough and professional investigation. The case moved slowly. Discovery began. Both sides exchanged documents, and then something happened that nobody expected. Biggie's attorneys discovered that the LAPD had been withholding documents, not misplacing them, not forgetting to file them, actively withholding a collection of files from the court, files that were directly relevant to the murder investigation, files that had existed for years inside the department and had never been turned over. The judge looked at what had been hidden. In 2005, the judge declared a mistrial. Not because the evidence was weak, not because Valletta Wallace's attorneys had made errors, because the LAPD had hidden documents from a federal court. The city was ordered to pay over $1 million in legal sanctions. The case had to start over. Think about what that means. A federal judge looked at the conduct of the Los Angeles Police Department in a murder investigation and found it so improper that he threw out the entire proceeding and made the city write a check for over $1 million. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is a court record. That is a matter of public legal history. The case was eventually dismissed in 2010, not because Valletta Wallace lost, but because her attorneys concluded that the city was never going to settle and the financial and emotional cost of continuing had become unsustainable. She had spent millions of dollars, 8 years of her life, reliving her son's murder in a courtroom over and over again, and the LAPD walked away without ever having to answer the central question. What was in those documents they hid from the court? But here's what the hidden documents pointed toward. The same LAPD officers who were assigned to investigate Biggie's murder had been working off-duty security for Death Row Records, the label founded by the man Valletta Wallace believed ordered her son's death. Officers who were supposed to be finding the killer had been on the payroll of the organization the family believed was responsible. That is what Russell Poole had found in 1998. That is what got his investigation shut down. That is what the LAPD spent 8 years and over $1 million in sanctions trying to keep out of a federal courtroom. The man the LAPD kept circling back to, through both the Tupac investigation and the Biggie investigation, was Suge Knight. And Suge Knight has been in prison since 2018, serving a 28-year sentence for voluntary manslaughter. Not for either murder, for running over a man in a parking lot, the man the detective named on camera, the man Biggie's family named in federal court. Still alive, still in prison, never charged with either killing. But here is what Suge Knight himself said when someone finally asked him directly about the night Biggie died. And the person he pointed at, it was not himself. The man the LAPD investigated for ordering Biggie's murder was sitting in prison, and when he finally spoke about that night, he didn't point at himself. He pointed somewhere else entirely.
I feel bad for Puffy because this your man right there. How is he shot and you not shot? This your man right there. He should be, I can't say I wasn't there, but if he wasn't in that car with Biggie, he should have been in that car with Biggie.
The man accused of ordering the murder, pointing at the victim's closest friend, the detective naming Suge naming Diddy, the LAPD hiding documents, the judge ordering sanctions, 3 different directions, 0 resolution, and 1 murder that has never been solved. Everything you just heard is about Biggie, but the documents the LAPD was hiding did not only mention Biggie's murder, they mentioned Tupac's, and what those files revealed about the connection between both killings and why both investigations hit the same wall at the same time is the part of this story that has never been fully told. That is the final chapter. The connection they never explained. Tupac Shakur was shot on September 7, 1996. He was in Las Vegas. He had just watched Mike Tyson knock out Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand. He was riding in a BMW with Suge Knight when a white Cadillac pulled alongside them and opened fire. Tupac was hit 4 times. He died 6 days later on September 13, 1996. He was 25 years old. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department opened an investigation. The FBI opened a parallel investigation. And the LAPD, which had been monitoring Death Row Records for years, was already sitting on files that were directly relevant to both murders. Here is what those files contain. During the execution of a search warrant connected to a separate investigation, federal agents searched the garage of an unnamed LAPD officer. Inside that garage, they found a shrine to Tupac Shakur. They found weapons, and they found LAPD police radios. An LAPD officer, a shrine to Tupac, department radios, weapons. That is not a rumor. That is what was documented in a federal search warrant. The same Rampart Division officer that Russell Poole had identified in the Biggie investigation, David Mack, had a known associate named Amir Muhammad. Poole believed Muhammad was the Biggie shooter. Mack had previously been convicted of bank robbery and had documented ties to Death Row Records. He had worked off-duty security for the label, 1 officer, 2 murder investigations. Both stalled at exactly the same point. Now here is where the Tupac connection locks in completely. The man eventually charged with Tupac's murder, Dwayne Keith Davis, known as Keith D, was the uncle of the man investigators believe pulled the trigger on Tupac. Keith D admitted in his own memoir to being in the white Cadillac the night Tupac was shot. He was charged in Nevada in September 2023. His trial began in 2024. But here's what Keith D's case revealed that nobody talked about loudly enough. Keith D told investigators that he had been approached before the shooting by people connected to Bad Boy Records offering money for the murder of Tupac and Suge Knight. He named Diddy's associate Zip as the person who made the offer. He said the amount discussed was $1 million. Now you have Suge Knight pointing at Diddy and Biggie's murder. You have Keith D pointing at Diddy's circle and Tupac's murder. You have LAPD officers connected to death row working security for the organization being investigated for both killings. And you have a federal judge finding that the LAPD hid documents in the middle of a wrongful death lawsuit that named Suge Knight. Every thread leads back to the same intersection: death row records, Bad Boy Records, the LAPD, and 2 unsolved murders that happened 5 months apart. This is the bold opinion, and you can disagree in the comments. Both investigations were allowed to stall because solving either murder would have required answering questions about the LAPD's own involvement. Russell Poole tried to answer those questions in 1998. He was shut down and pushed out. The department spent over $1 million in federal sanctions rather than turn over documents that might have answered them. And 29 years later, neither murder has produced a conviction. That is not incompetence. Incompetence produces wrong answers. This produced no answers at all. Biggie's personal bodyguard heard what Suge Knight said from prison. He had one thing to say back.
I never called anybody from death row to his security. That wasn't my job. I was Puff's personal bodyguard. I didn't call to get no security for nobody. When I went to work, I had my own contract, brother. I ain't called nobody to do nothing. So you wrong, and the information that you getting and the people that's feeding you that, check out them band boys. Because they lying to you, brother.
3 people in that clip alone giving 3 different versions of who was responsible. The detective says Suge. Suge says Diddy. Biggie's bodyguard says everybody has the wrong information. And somewhere inside a collection of LAPD documents that a federal judge proved existed and that the city paid over $1 million in sanctions to keep out of a courtroom, there may be an answer that none of them want found. Russell Poole, the detective who first identified the LAPD's connection to death row, never stopped investigating. He died in 2019 during an interview with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. He was in the middle of discussing the Biggie murder case when he collapsed and died of a heart attack. He never got to finish what he was saying. The case he spent 20 years trying to crack died with him in that room. The closing is next. A federal judge proved the LAPD hid documents in a murder case, and the city paid over $1 million in sanctions rather than reveal what was inside them. 2 men, 2 murders, 5 months apart, both connected to the same label, both investigated by the same department, both unsolved after 29 years. So here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. The LAPD had files connecting both murders. A judge proved they hid them. Russell Poole tried to expose it and lost his career. So I want to know, do you believe both murders will ever be solved? Or do you think somebody already knows exactly what happened and has decided the world will never find out?